I can't buy an airplane. I can't buy an airplane. But I can't buy an airplane. I don't have a hangar to put it in. Just because you don't have a hangar to put it in doesn't mean that you don't deserve an airplane. As a matter of fact, you should totally get that airplane and show everyone else what you can do with very little. I am such an advocate of parking airplanes outside that I always get something like this. This is a battery bank, lots of plugs in the front. It's even got USB chargers up top and a car socket over here on the other side. I'm not sponsored by Anker, at least not yet, but again, because I advocate for keeping airplanes outside and not making excuses, this is a really cool system. Now, what can it power? I mean, this thing will power just about anything you can plug into it. And if you need anything that's more powerful than that, you're doing something wrong. You should really involve an AMP and take the airplane into a hangar. I can plug a heater into here. I can plug a portable AC unit into here, a water heater. But any tool that runs on 110 volts, this thing will power it. Let's see if I can show you the solar power. Like I said, I'm really a fan of being able to keep airplanes outside because the hangar shortage that we're experiencing in America is not going anywhere anytime soon. So this little tool, this Anker battery pack, and there's a company called EcoFlow that makes some of these Jackery. There's even a company now from Harbor Freight that makes a really nice unit. But having one of these or something similar will allow you that flexibility to park your airplane under a shade port or in the middle of nowhere and have power tools, have a heater, so if you're camping in the airplane because you're afraid of lions and tigers and bears, take a small portable heater, a space heater, and you have a nice comfortable place to sleep. Now that I'm thinking about it, that might actually be a great safety tool, especially for those of you who are going to have winter for like another 3 months. It's already summer here and it's the first day of April, so it's already hot. We don't care about the cool anymore or heating up our spaces. So yeah, if you get stranded somewhere, there's less of a pressure to leave and try to get somewhere in low IMC or when you're running low on fuel. If you can just recline the seats of your airplane or slide them forward and sit on your back seat and camp out there. If you have one of these units, it's about 27 pounds, but it will run my space heater. I didn't think about that. Here we go, the Anker Solix PS200 portable solar panel. This gives me 200 watts of charging. So on a unit like the battery bank that we have, that's about 1,000 watt hours of juice in full sunlight. And you know, I'm not doing the math for efficiencies and all that kind of thing. I'm just kind of rounding numbers here. But in full sunlight, I could probably recharge that battery in about 5 hours, let's say 5.5, 6 hours of sunlight. So if I'm drawing down on it or using something that's, let's say 200 watts or less, which is the most of the stuff that I'm using, like my laptop, my 3D scanner, are less than 200 watts. If I have the battery hooked up to the solar panel, I could probably run that battery all day long and it never leave 100%. Now, if you're drawing down a bigger load, you can just do the math between how much you're pulling out and how much you're pulling in. And there's an app for this whole thing that shows you how it's charging, what the charge state is. You can turn it off and turn it on at different times. That battery bank will actually run my refrigerator. It'll run it for like a solid, 3-5 hours. I'm not entirely sure, but it will run it in case of a power outage. And hurricane season is coming up around here, so yeah, we're gonna use this. Would you look at that? And one of the coolest things I just realized is they have this little kickstand built into the back of them, so you can tilt it at different angles. And again, it folds up, and then there's just a really nice, convenient handle right there. So yeah, that's that system. Okay, so we came out here to the hangar, and we're going to put that Anker battery unit to the test. And I'm not going to start with any of those basic, simple tests. You can go on YouTube and, well, here on YouTube, and you can find plenty YouTube reviewers who are doing reviews of this system in household settings, running refrigerators, running portable AC units, running water heaters, that kind of thing. The Bonanza has a block heater, an engine heater that's that just naturally hooked up to it. So in the cold weather, which it's pretty much non-existent in Savannah, you can hook up the engine to a normal powered plug and you can get your engine preheated. Let's plug this into this. I'm just gonna pick any old port. There we go. And it's not gonna get power until you actually turn that row on. So let's turn that row on. And let's see how much electricity this thing's gonna pull. Right now, it's pulling 500 watts. And it can pull about 500 watts. This is saying for about 2 hours. So in a very worst case scenario, this 500 watt block heater will run for 2 hours, get your engine nice and warm before you go out and start it. So yeah, this is the Anker C1000, the Anker Solix C1000. The other really cool thing is I actually hooked up a system in the van that will charge this thing at about 500 watts. And this is what that system looks like. Right down here and under the seat, I kind of hid it away, but there is a unit that is plumbed into the battery system that only turns on when the vehicle's running. It senses voltage and turns on, but it uses the solar charging connector or the DC charging connector that comes with the Anker system, and it'll charge the Anker battery at about 500 watts or 500 watts per hour, right? So if the airplane is pulling 500 watts to get heated up and the truck or the van or your car is supplying 500 watts, that battery is going to last a really long time. I'm not advocating idling your vehicle for 2 hours at a time, but you can recharge it on the drive here, or you can just have the car running for 10, 20 minutes to keep the battery topped up a little bit longer if you need it. If you really need to go to those extremes, you should probably consider relocating to Savannah, Georgia, or somewhere in Florida, maybe the Caribbean, where it's not 10 degrees every single day. So there's your tip. All right, still pulling about 500 watts. It's a little under 500 watts. And it is hooked up right here. And there's a heating element that's here. There's another heating element that's under the engine. And even standing right here, I can feel the warmth of the engine. So that thing's putting out some good power, and you know, we're not actually running a vehicle to do it. So this could totally be done outside. You know, as if one example wasn't enough, I'm gonna go give you another one right now. We're gonna hop in the van, we're gonna drive over to the shade port, to the Arrow, and we're gonna use that battery pack for another example. Right now is the absolute worst time to remember that the Arrow's not here. It's still an annual or getting its annual. But am I gonna let a lack of shade port stop me from having wait a minute. Am I gonna have the lack of an airplane stop me from having a shade port? No, opposite way around, right? Shift things up, change your perspective. But anyways, let's open up the van and take a look at this. I've got this thing right here. Here's same battery pack and a gigantic compressor. And I say gigantic for a shade port. You don't usually get something like that on their shade port, right? So what are we gonna do? Plug this in to any one of these ports, power it on. This thing's pulling about 1,000 watts. And it can do this for about an hour. If this thing's not full after an hour, you're doing something wrong. Okay, so Let's just pretend that everything worked and the tank's now full. At a point like this, I would take my ear chuck, walk over to my imaginary airplane, bend down, and put air into my imaginary tires, like this. Zoom, zoom, ear, ear. Awesome. You get the point. These battery packs are incredible, and they're often under some kind of a sale. You can even find them used online on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace. So we're not gonna let a lack of power stop us from having nice things or having access to nice things, even here under the shade port. So I hope this has been at least informational for some of you. The shade does change everything. I mean, it gives you really nice protection against UV damage on the airplane and on yourself, on your skin. Remember to use sunscreen. That's the #1 thing I would recommend if you have an airplane outside. But #2 is to get a battery pack like that so you can run lights, you can run a compressor if you wanted to, you can recharge your phone while you work, you can use electric impact tools if you needed to. As a matter of fact, if you're going that far, you probably shouldn't be using those types of things without AMPs anyway, but you understand where I'm going with this. Now, the other thing to think about is something like this. This is a portable tire inflator. You turn it on, you screw the tube up top, it senses what the pressure is, and you tell it what you want the pressure to be set to. I fly with one of these in the back of every one of my airplanes. I've got 2 of these. And I also fly with a portable jump starter. And I only really thought about this now because I saw it when I opened up the door, but this is the Fantic T8 Apex. It can charge your phone. It has an emergency flashlight on it, very bright light. And this thing will jumpstart the airplane, no problem, absolutely no problem. It'll jumpstart the airplane several times, actually. So if you've got a bad battery or dead battery, you forgot to turn the master off, this thing is an excellent tool to have on the road. Or if you're under a shade port and you can't charge your battery overnight, don't get stranded. Buy one of these things. They're well worth their weight in gold. So that's what I've got for you today. I hope that was helpful. I've got a couple more episodes like this where we're actually looking at things and tools and making your ownership journey a little bit more viable, especially when it comes to parking outside or parking in an older hangar or parking under a shade port. I'm going to be looking out for you folks, the ones that don't have $1 million to just toss around to have someone manage your airplane. And if you do, that's perfectly okay. You're welcome here. But I think it's important for you to understand how we're living life and how we're trying to find solutions, clever solutions, to some of these common issues. Be good to your neighbor. Give that little pet a little scratch. And we'll see you again soon. I mean, honestly, do you think the guys and gals who are flying nice Cirruses and business jets are having more fun than you who's bombing down the coast at 500 feet, at least 500 feet away from someone or someone's property? Get that airplane.